What is up, natties? Uncle Kyle coming back at you with another DIY video, and a familiar face right next to me, the creator, Papa David, the leather master, is here to show us how it's done. So, if you watched the last video, you saw me sew up a couple of components of the pouch, and now we are getting ready to finish it, and Dad is going to put the pièce de résistance on this pouch. So go ahead and explain to them what you're about to do.
So this is the final sewing stage. When we make these pouches, because the pockets aren't flat against the leather, they kind of bow out to accept some tools. It takes a little bit to get them all lined up. And so we've got, I glue them. We've got these wide channel locks, and I use some fastening hardware temporarily in there to help line it up and stuff.
And the reason we use the glue is it's just another extra layer of security, right? Once you glue it up and then you sew it.
The glue really is to just hold it. The thread is what keeps it in place. I mean, obviously it helps, but that's mostly to just keep it hugged in place. And so I've already got stitching lines cut in here,
which I showed you guys in the last video. We put the stitch grooves in so the stitches aren't raised above the leather. They sit flush with it, essentially. It makes it a smoother product and it protects the threads, right?
Correct. So this was all fastened on this other pouch. We added this reinforcing gusset a number of years ago when Kyle brought his home and it had been torn through there. So we've added this little gusset to try and reinforce it. We also now, this back used to just be doubled halfway down. Now it's all doubled. So I think we're on version 2.13.
Yeah, and if you guys remember, if you see my pouch, I'll throw up another picture of it. What he just mentioned is this back half of the pouch used to just be a half piece versus a full back piece. So steadily over time, we have added more to the pouch to add to its structural integrity. Because like he mentioned, I had a pouch that ripped in that center part where we have that support, and that's why we added that. And there were also a couple other people who also had the same issue, so that's why we added that. Like I said in the first video, we have refined this design over time to make it suit the use the purpose that it is used for. You know what I'm saying? And that was just another one of the additions. So we have it glued up, as you can see right here. Let me take that from you real quick. As you can see right here, he already has this front piece sewed on, or no, it's just glued on. He already has the front piece sewed together. So this is that front section with the screwdrivers like I showed you guys, the middle pouch, and then our fold with the reinforcement. So you guys can see that. So now he is going to do the final sewing on this bottom part to attach it to the back. And then we will add our hardware and put in some wood forms to actually form the pockets, because if you do not expand these pockets, this leather is tough. If you don't stretch them open a little bit for them to receive the tools, it is a chore to get those things formed up. So
these are made more like, they're form fitted like a firearm, a gun holster, so that there's some friction on it to hold the tools in, as opposed to other tool pouches where they just fit in by gravity.
Well, and if you guys heard, you remember I was calling them a tool pouch, but Dad a while ago told me I want to start calling it a tool holster, because to his point, we form fit these so they will accept the tools, and it almost clicks in like it was designed for the tool to be there. Over time, if you put tools in it, that's what it will do. It will form to the tool. So we are going to get into a little bit of sewing here. We will switch our camera angle so you guys can see that. Now, you saw me slightly botch one piece that I did the last time, so hopefully Dad will just be able to nail it on this one. No pressure at all.
One take?
One take, no pressure at all, no redos.
All right. So the thickness of that leather is probably 1/2 or 5/8. This machine can sew up to about 3/4, but this is going to be a pretty good test. So we start sewing backwards on this so I can lock the stitches as they come forward.
Yep. You heard
All
it
right,
there
here we go.
first. I did it too. Well, and the other thing that's worth mentioning with this that we have experienced is if you make the thickness of the leather too deep, because we have made knife sheaths and gun holsters where there's multiple layers that need to be sewn together. If you make it too thick, the needle on that machine will snap off, and it is kind of scary when that happens. And Natties, you see how Dad is going nice and slow with his sewing like I did? Now, you can run this machine up to where you could probably do that in a few... Oh, there he goes. Oh, he's going to risk doing it a little faster. But for the most part, you know, we're not manufacturing hundreds or thousands of these. We make them on demand. So it doesn't really suit us to be trying to sew at lightning speed. Like, as long as the thing gets sewed, it's in the stitch groove, and it has a nice uniform stitch, that's all we care about. If it takes a little bit of time, that's the cost of doing business. How we feeling about that?
Turned out good.
It looks good. It looks like you nailed it. So, in making these custom pouches, initially we stuck to the same pattern. We used black thread on everything, and we would use essentially a shiny, I wouldn't call it stainless steel. What would you call it? The shiny hardware that we would use.
Oh, nickel.
A nickel colored hardware. But as we did more of these, because there are a lot of options out there for these, you can get, and I'll throw some pictures up, you can get a copper colored screws, black, weathered brass, shiny brass. It comes in all shapes and sizes, but essentially that is how it looks when it's
all right,
done
let's
sewing.
hammer the thread a little.
So now what Dad is doing is, like I told you guys in the last video, you stitch it, you put those grooves in the leather so the stitches will lay down, but also what he has in his hand is that's called a cobbler's hammer, right?
Yep.
That is typically something that's used by someone who is making shoes, but it will not damage the leather, and it allows you to just kind of hammer the stitches down so they are a little flatter.
Of all the ones that we've done, I don't think we've ever had a stitching failure.
No, I think you're right. I think
there's
typically
another cobbler's hammer.
There it is. Bow.
So, it's ready for hardware. You're up, Kyle.
All right. So, as I mentioned before, these things are primarily held together by glue and stitching. However, we do like to put some hardware in then because it just gives the bond that extra bite. It's just another layer of protection to keep the pouch together. Because like I said previously, if you take care of these things and you treat them with a relative level of respect, they will last you a long time. But also, if you're like me and you're abusive on your stuff and you're putting high demand on it, you need to kind of have things in place that will ensure that it's not going to fall apart on you entirely.
So we use Chicago screws. I can't remember if your very first one I used rivets, but the rivets aren't very, they're tubular and they're not very stiff. What we put in these Chicago screws are a two-sided screw where the nut side is actually What color are we using?
Silver.
All right.
Or nickel, as it were. But to Dad's point, we did one with rivets, but I think we have pretty much been using the Chicago screws the entire time. Now, is there a reason that they are called Chicago screws, or is that just the name of the company?
I don't know. Google Chicago screws.
We will look it up, and I'll put it up on the screen why they're called Chicago
So
screws.
the bigger ones that I've used in doors and stuff, it basically just gives you a finish on both sides.
Yep.
So you don't have a nut, it's flat.
Hold that up so the camera can see it. So you have one side that has a female thread. Here he goes with the demonstration. And then another side that is a threaded screw that threads into that. And essentially what we do is, or actually I'll go to this camera. We take the back that has a threaded insert and we put it in this side, and then we thread the screw in the front. And we even have a special tool right here. This has a little rubber piece on the back because the one side of these is not slotted. It is a ornamental finish, if you will. It doesn't have a slot or a Phillips head for you to put a screw in. So if you don't have something to hold that, it will spin while you're trying to screw it in. Hence this tool, it has a little rubber back on it that holds that thing and keeps it from spinning. And then you put your hardware in.
And we also use
red Loctite to make sure the pouch doesn't come apart.
Because we discovered that if we don't get the screws really, really tight, that they'll back out.
Yeah. And they do fall out occasionally, but we always, as I mentioned previously, replace them, warranty them, fix the pouches, because this is not something that we're trying to make a bunch of money on or turn into a company. This is strictly a nice hobby that we get to share with one another and make some cool pouches, and people just love these. So what you probably saw on the other camera was I was finishing these holes. So like I said in the previous video, we have dies that we punch these individual pieces of leather with. And some of them already have the holes pre-cut and some of them do not. So we have to go back and punch the leather out so we can put our hardware in.
Where's your original at?
Down in my tool bag. The OG, the big,
the Whopper
B52 one. Oh man, I think I'm gonna. I can't do it for the video, but I'm gonna find a picture and I'll put it up right in front of me and you'll get to see, because, like I told you guys before, I saw somebody that had one of these pouches and I was like, man, that's cool. I sent him a picture and I was like, do you think you could make something like that? And of course, nothing ever turns out perfect the first time around. So you have to, make different versions, change little things that so it adapts more to what you're trying to use it for. But
version
the first one
1.0 was a Whopper.
It was a boat anchor.
And you dutifully used it, and I appreciate it. But yeah, it's gotten better over time.
Well, yeah.
Well, and that one was hand sewed. And the reason I got the machine was trying to hold those things together and poke holes and sew them just became really difficult. So that helped.
And I mentioned that too in a previous video, and we actually have it here. If you're going to hand sew something, what is this called? Do you know what the name of this is? We will figure it out and I'll put it on the screen. But anyways, this is a clamp right here. You can clamp your project in it. Presumably you sit on this part or put some kind of weight and you sew, but you have to pull each thread tight to make sure the piece stays together. And it is cool when you hand sew one. It gives it a nice finish, but it is extremely labor intensive. So
even wearing gloves, it tears your fingers up pretty good, for me at least.
So that's why we got the sewing machine more out of necessity than anything, because it just makes that process much easier. Because if you're sewing by hand, that lengthens the process of making one of these a lot. Sewing machine
sewing one of these by hand would probably take me 4 or 5 hours.
So I'll show you on this one. So you'll see Dad has already punched holes here. Our light went out. But anyways, as you can see, Dad punched holes right here And that allows him to line everything up on this front piece so he can get that sewn together. So we typically use those holes to hit that one. Then this upper pouch has one right here that meets up with these holes. And the back portion that goes in your pocket has 2 holes that meet up here. Now this leather is stiff. We have not formed it up yet, and you will see that in the next video. But you have to fold this leather. I typically use some of the clamps. I will fold it, clamp it, so that way it locks in that fold, and then we're good to go. So I will punch this bottom section really quick so you guys can see how we put that together. Now, there's an art and a science to a lot of this, and then some of it is just a good eyeball. So for me, I look at where the back of the punch is coming through on this side and where it's going through on that side. And then if I have to, I will push and adjust the leather so it all lines up a little better. And then you just gotta say a prayer and squeeze. And I'm twisting that because, as you can see, little pieces of leather are falling out the back of this. And sometimes you got to take a couple goes at it. So we got through most of the back. And as you can see, the light went out again. There's a little divot right there where it cut through that part. So I'll just go ahead and finish that hole. We try to avoid accidentally cutting the threads because, like I said in the previous video, if you end up cutting those threads, it could potentially unravel, and we don't want that, especially with this part, because having to go back and replace this part would be an absolute nightmare. It would essentially involve dissecting the whole pouch apart, which at that point, I'd just rather make you a new one, if I'm being honest. So we got our 1 hole punched. We line up our second. And like I said, you got to check both sides because the dimensions vary a touch. We get our first little stab going. We take that out. Boom, that one actually got all the way through. Look at that. So with these Chicago screws, there are varying sizes to them and lengths to the post. This is a post. This is a screw, obviously, because it has the threads. But typically for these, we'll use the longer ones for the bottom. And then this part where this whole front section gets clamped together, because it just makes it easier to get them together. Because in the past, I know you remember this, you tried to use one of these posts that's a little bit shorter, and then you're sitting there wrestling, trying to line the holes up and everything.
We also punched the holes smaller. Now that we got the holes larger, we don't have to struggle with that either. Gazoonite.
Bless me. Dad is applying some Loctite. That is... I hope I'm done. Dad is applying some Loctite because obviously you can see the point that this at. I hope I'm done. That's a point where this hinges and there's going to be weight on it. So the reason for the screw is keeps that thing locked in. Keeps us from putting pressure on the threads. That is the point of the screw. The Loctite is there because with this thing moving around and flexing, sometimes those screws have the tendency to turn a little bit. We have had people who have had them fall out in the past. I don't know what's going on. So that's why we switched to the red Loctite, because there really is no reason for anybody to be taking these apart. Once this pouch is together, if you maintain it well, keep it clean, put a little oil on it, she'll be good to go. So we line it up, and then Dad will drop her in. Turn towards the camera a little bit, that way. And then he screws it on. Now, We are descendant of German Irish farmers, so we have thick, calloused fingers. So typically I do a pretty good job of holding it on my own. But once you get it started, we'll take our tool that we were talking about. Does this thing have a special name? Because I know you ordered this.
Chicago screw holder.
It's a Chicago screw holder. You clamp the back, and it gives you room to have the screwdriver in it, and then you finish it. Boom. And you tighten it up good and tight. Because the next step of this, and I don't know if we will get this in the video, is we use, where are all the wood blocks at? We use, at first I was using a toy birdhouse set to form these pockets and open them up, but Dad had a bunch of hardwood laying around, and he trimmed down a bunch of the pieces, so I will stuff these into the pockets to essentially open them up and give the customer a little room to where they can stick their tools in, let them sit in there over time and form up. But like a gun holster, like, you have to work it. It does not just immediately accept your tools. Or perhaps we'll do that in the future and try to form things up a little better initially so there will be no issues. But also, as I was saying in the first video, people use these differently. For me, I have a specific loadout and the way that I load it up. Other people like to do things a little bit differently. I'm not trying to tell people how to use these. You can use it however you like. There is a more recommended version, which is what I do. But if you just want to, if you want to stuff crayons in one of these, go nuts.
So, a couple of gun holsters to demonstrate. Plastic form gun. So,
Not a real gun, YouTube. Don't ban us. Not a real gun.
So that, you can see this one kind of is a little hugged. It takes a little bit to get out of there. It doesn't slide in and slide out real easy. This particular one was wet formed. So it literally, the gun was in it, the leather was wet, and then we formed it down on it. So it takes it's not stuck in there, but it's definitely holding it. So that's the same kind of retention that we tried to use on the tool holsters.
Yeah, because when you're using one of these and you're climbing up and down ladders, you're going to be bouncing around a little bit. You want the leather to hug the tool. You don't want it to be super loosey-goosey. You also don't want this thing to have a vice grip on your tools where you're ripping the whole pouch out of your pocket. So it takes time to find a happy medium with that. But as you can see, I'll show you on this camera. As you can see, we have these screws in the bottom there. We will take the clamps, as I told you previously, and fold this in half, like I'm trying to do with my hands. Boom. We will fold it in half like that.
You'll clamp it up?
To form that. And then we will put the hardware in the rest of this, use the pieces of hardwood to form the pockets. I typically hit it with another round of leather conditioner, and then it's off to the customer. But that is an extremely extensive process, one which we will probably not get to in this video. But also, Dad brought something cool. So as I mentioned in the first video, Dad has been doing leather working for a very long time. The apron that he is wearing used to be a pair of chaps that he would wear when he was in 4-H and he would ride Broncos. And then also, you used to be a firefighter and a paramedic, and you made yourself a little tool pouch for that. So tell people about that.
So this was so we could carry some of the stuff we used. I think this had a trauma scissors for cutting clothes off, oxygen wrench. There was a bite stick, I think a hemostats. People carried all sorts of...
That is a wrench for the top of an oxygen tank.
It tightens up the valve, and then you can turn it on and off with this.
That's not something that they need anymore, though. That's like seriously old school, right?
I mean, the valves are still the same, so this would work on them, but most of them have handles now or that type of stuff. Oh. So at any rate, that kind of rode up higher on your belt. I made this one by hand. Probably 45 years ago.
Look at that. How cool is that? But the whole purpose behind us showing you this is, I mean, in this day and age, there isn't a whole heck of a lot that you can't find on Amazon, but when you need something that is purpose built exactly for what you are doing, oftentimes the only way you're going to get that is either by extreme luck because somebody had the same purpose and they built it, or you're going to have to take the initiative and build it yourself. So that is kind of the whole purpose with what we're doing with this video series. I will probably either add a video in post, or I will just add some pictures of the finished product of this pouch because we have many, many more to do. As you guys can see, Dad did the cool A's tooling on this one. We're making a Dragon Ball Z pouch. We're making a Halo Spartan Armor pouch. We're making a Pittsburgh Steelers pouch. All kinds of crazy stuff. So in future videos, there's the beginning stages of Dad getting ready to tool that piece to make the Steelers logo. But in future videos, we will show you some of that. I am going to kind of mix these up. We'll do something interesting. We got like some painting and other things to do. Maybe we'll do some Dad, how do you do this type stuff? And you could see maybe me working a little bit of electrical. Maybe we'll work on the car. Maybe we'll clean some guns. Who knows? But anyways, thanks for checking in with us. I'm Uncle Kyle as always.
Uncle Kyle's dad.
That's my daddy. These are the cool pouches that we made. See you later. All right, here it is, guys. We have the final product. I just hit this with a little leather conditioner, so that's why she's looking a little dark. There it is. Got to see the whole process start to finish. Yeah. Thanks for watching.